Welcome to another episode of Bat Crazy. And let's start with a shout out to Hungary. No, that wasn't on my bingo card for this episode either, but it is deserved, I promise. They basically told the ICC to sod off. And yes, that is a technical term. The International Criminal Court gives the UN a run for its money when it comes to useless global bodies that pretend to stand for humanity. Rubbing more salt in the wound, the withdrawal coincided with the very public welcoming of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the victim of fake war crime allegations, completely rubbished by any legal/war expert with even half a brain. This is how you respond to the atrocious behaviour of these organisations, by the way. You quit.
I need to talk about the International Criminal Court. Hungary has decided, the Hungarian government has decided to withdraw from it. We've come to believe that it has become a political court. So in recent years, it is no longer an impartial rule of law court, but a political court. And this was most clearly shown by the decisions related to Israel. We believe that a democratic state that values itself like Hungary cannot and should not participate in an international court driven by political motivations. This otherwise important international judicial forum has been turned into a political tool, and we cannot and do not want to associate with it in the future.
The less members they have, the less relevance and the less money they get. Hopefully this is the start of, as, well, President Trump would say, a big, beautiful trend. Please, other nations, follow suit. And just on that, a very interesting post on X that I noticed. The German foreign minister has come out scathing of Hungary.
This is a bad day for international criminal law.
Saying that essentially this is a very bad day for international law. There's a lovely photo of her with a dictator, the Syrian one. I'd say that's a worse day. Amichai Chikli, of course, part of the Israeli government, took to X and said sometimes silence is the best option. Couldn't say it better myself. Now, could it be that some in the world are starting to wake up? Well, in America at least. And I preface the following with the fact there is any division on this is, well, BBC. Bat beep crazy. A recent poll found over 3 in 4 US voters support Israel over Hamas and agree that Hamas must release all the hostages. I mean, the fact that anyone does not agree is utterly ridiculous, but not surprising. It's another reminder, and we need them constantly, that the silent majority are just that. A majority and, well, silent. And the useful idiots and dangerous drongos are a minority but take up all the space. Most of their contributions are vacuous, but still they make most of the noise. So keep shouting the truth from every platform you can, no matter how big or small. I know it can feel pointless, but clearly it's not. It's making a difference. Now, including the fact that I say this every week, yes, Hamas, the terrorists, you can shout this from every platform too, they lie about everything. I know, bizarre. As well as carrying out sadistic slaughters, who'd have thought? This week they revised, and that's the polite way of putting it. They admitted that 72% of deaths since they started the war, are combat-aged men. So despite their overt and ridiculous attempts at telling the world 70% of those killed were women and children, how many times did they repeat that? Turns out that's not the case at all. In fact, far from it. Now, regardless, every single death of any innocent, particularly children, is a tragedy, but it is also the fault of Hamas and Hamas alone. They invaded Israel. Yes, we still have to remind people. They barbarically slaughtered over 1,200. They took hostages, some of whom they still have, and they refused to give them back, while simultaneously promising to kill Israelis over and over again. And just to reiterate, they lie, now even admitting it themselves. So wake up, Western world's media, and stop quoting terrorists as legitimate news sources. They ain't. And even they are now admitting it. Catch up. Actually, I'm a beacon for hope and truth. That's not entirely true. There is one circumstance where it appears Western media are sceptical, refuse to believe reports out of Gaza, therefore ignore them completely. And that's when it involves protests against Hamas. Throw into that category the shallow activists who pretend to be motivated only by the welfare of those humans in Gaza, that is, and you have the vast majority not even covering massive protests by the very people they purport to care about. In fact, Hamas themselves even confirmed they'd killed 6 in Gaza who'd taken part. Still, nothing. Crickets. Donuts. You see, as we all know, it has never been about anyone's welfare in Gaza, not even a little bit. The only thing the vacant mouthpieces care about is what they can weaponise against Israel and the Jews. Unfortunately, trying to blame Israel for protests against Hamas is, well, a bridge too far, even for the vast majority of them. Except, it would appear, for the Greens Party leader in Australia, Adam Bandt. He suggested that it was, in fact, Israel to blame for the terrorists in Gaza executing those who dared march in protest against them. He refused to specifically condemn Hamas when asked about the murder of civilians this past week and proceeded to say, and I quote, "For all killings to finally stop and for Palestinians and Israelis to have a just and lasting peace, the occupation of Palestine and the invasion of Gaza need to end." It gets worse, by the way, and I quote, "Australia needs to move from words to action and put pressure on the extremist Netanyahu government to end the occupation of Palestine, which is the root cause of the conflict, and end the invasion of Gaza." It's almost too stupid to address. I mean, like, where do you start? He could be the most useful idiot of them all. Occupation. There was no occupation prior to October 7. Do you remember October 7, Mr. Bandt? The massacre Hamas filmed themselves, the day they butchered women and children in their beds and took others hostages, nearly 60 of which still remain in Gaza. You want to talk about the root cause of the conflict? That's a pretty good place to start. You are so foolish. Notice how he can't even muster an afterthought for the hostages still living in hell, not to mention those dead. And just when you think he and his morally bankrupt colleagues can't sink any lower, well, they do. Speaking of new lows, 60 Minutes dug a meteoric-sized crater to reach theirs this week, using the pain and suffering of Israeli hostages to pursue a narrative that only benefits their captors. And, more importantly, just is not true. Again, quoting Hamas casualty numbers, lies proven repeatedly by experts to not be the case. Blaming Israel for the resumption of war, absurd. For breaking the ceasefire, again, completely false. Then asked one of the former hostages if in fact the terrorists had only starved him because they themselves were starving.
The terrorists became very mean and very cruel and violent.
More so.
Much more so. They were beating me and starving me.
Do you think they starved you or they just didn't have food?
No, I think they starved me, and they would often eat in front of me and not offer me food.
It's bad enough when they do this under normal circumstances, but to do it when traumatized victims of terror trust them with their stories, again, a whole new level of low. The Democrats have a new hero, having clearly moved on from Bernie Sanders and AOC. Cory Booker spoke for over 25 hours in what he described as a moral moment. Those of us who are sane would just call it a complete waste of time. But didn't the leftist darlings love it?
Left or right, it's right or wrong. It's getting good trouble. My friend, Madam President, I yield the floor.
The ineffective gimmick did nothing to improve the lives of anyone, let alone the standing of the Democratic Party. Yet The Guardian described it like this, their headline. After months of surrender, the Democrats have finally stood up to Trump. Thank you, Cory Booker. Really? I can guarantee Trump's care factor was 0, if not less. In between saving America, the world, and playing golf, he'd have hardly noticed. Except, of course, to take the mickey, no doubt. Yes, Cory might have made history with the longest Senate speech ever, but Trump is changing the future of not only Americans, but the world, with significant actions and policies that will take up far more space when they write accounts of these times down the track. When will the Dems understand that stunts don't work? And that if they really want to serve their nation, they've got to start producing, I don't know, something of substance. Mind you, why would they? When the cheer squad says things like this in response.
And I want to emphasize, what Cory Booker did over the last 24 hours may have changed the course of political history. I watched a lot of it.
No wonder nobody is having hard conversations. They are all completely deluded. And speaking of, Purple People, person 1, with this powerful declaration. No doubt she votes Democrat. Well, for the women, anyway.
March 31st, 2025. I am a 58-year-old adult human female. I am formally making my proclamation, exclamation, right now to you. I will no longer be associating with any white males of any kind. It does not matter if liberal or conservative. It does not matter what color hair or eyes. As long as the skin is white and it is a male, I will not be associating with it anymore. The symbolism of a white male has become the epitome.
I'm sure they, as a collective, will be utterly devastated. Thanks for joining me. See you next week.